Welcome, welcome. Welcome back, intelligent and amazing people. Class is in session. All right. Tonight, I got some great topics to discuss. Well, one great topic to discuss. But amongst that topic, there are going to be many great videos that I'm going to share with you tonight. So without further ado, to like, share, and subscribe. This is an intelligent audience. This is an amazing audience. But more importantly, this is an audience that understands that oftentimes information that we get from the corporate media is not always current. More importantly, it is not always information that I can say this honestly, information that is really helpful. A lot of propaganda. We discussed propaganda in length yesterday, so I won't get into it too much tonight about propaganda. But for those of you who did not see the video yesterday regarding propaganda, let me just go ahead and show you a picture of that so that you'll know the book I'm referring to. Move my beverage out the way. Gotta have a beverage when you're talking about these issues. Beverage of your choice. Could be ginger ale. Could be something other kind of ale. But all right. So this is nays. Like I said, we covered this yesterday. Got into the material. Tonight, we're not going to touch on it much, but I will say this. You know, sometimes when you do these live shows, you got to make a correction. Yesterday, after reviewing the video, I realized that I did not say a word correctly. I said was conscious. We were talking about organizing chaos, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of organized habits and the opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. So the word that I had confused, sometimes it happens. Reading out loud is not my favorite thing to do, but we are going to do it on this show because it's necessary. So anyway, that's the book, Propaganda. If you don't have it in your library, you need to get it. It is an amazing book describing exactly basically what's going on now. And yeah, there's no other way to put it. There is a lot of insanity going on, and the use of propaganda is in full effect. To that end, the most recent video that I saw today was funny, but sad at the same time, and kind of disturbing. And the reason I say that is because the person involved in the video is a well-known advocate and very wealthy individual who has greatly benefited from this this pandemic that we've been having, right? And a big advocate of a medical procedure that he is highly invested in. Of course, you know I'm speaking of no other than Bill Gates. But I saw this video. It was taken from a conference, the Munich Security Conference. It happened on February the 18th of this year. So what is the date? The 22nd. Speaking of which, let me digress this a little bit. Today is the February 22nd, 2022. Imagine that. 22222. For some people, and deal with numerology and astrology, this is an important date. For others, it don't mean anything, but I thought it was ironic. The date today. I even heard one guy say that whatever you're doing on 2022 is going to be impactful for the rest of the year. So I'll take that as a good omen and take his advice and continue putting out good material, education material, somewhat entertaining. If you like to be educated, if that's entertaining to you, it's entertaining to me. But anyway, back to the subject. 18th involved Bill Gates. Bill Gates, the advocate for everything medical procedure. Notice that I'm using the word medical procedure. Now, I also have to say this because I don't want the social media gods, the YouTube bosses and managers to know that there are some scientists and doctors who say that the medical procedure advocated for the last year and a half is very effective in fighting an illness that is very prevalent right now. We won't say the name of that illness. We will try to not say that word too much, if at all. But some say that the procedure is very effective in fighting the illness. Others don't agree, but there's a lot of doctors who do say that it helps and that it's very effective. So we'll just put that out there. And more importantly, Michael Scott, the Scott Report is not it's not a medical channel. I am not a doctor. I do not give medical advice. You should go to your doctor or whoever you get information from regarding your medical health. That is not what I do here. I am not a virologist. I am not a medical doctor. I am not a scientist. I'm just a regular lay person with an opinion that I think is valid. And that's that. So to that end, and with that said, let's take a look at the video that I'm talking about here. Give me a moment to kind of manipulate this screen. If you've ever dealt with Zoom or multiple monitors, you know that it can be somewhat of a challenge, but I'm learning. Zoom allows us to get right into the topic with a live broadcast through YouTube. It's very interesting how it works. It kind of interfaces, but yeah, it's a very, very good system. So let's find our friend, Mr. Gates. All right. You know what? I think I actually put that in the file. So I know y'all got patience out there in the audience. Please continue to have patience with me. All right, I have a file called COVID-19. And then I have another file called pandemic. Let me grab that. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay. Let's pull this up. You know what? No, it's in quick access, right? It's got to be there. All right. This is crazy. Let me see. All right. Well, I thought I downloaded it, but if I didn't, I have another way to access it. So fear not. We are going to get that video right now. As a matter of fact, let me show you this. Before we get into that video, let me show you this video because this is important and this relates to that. And while this is playing, I'll find the other one. All right. So here we go. I'm going to share this screen here. And that was 2018 by a group of doctors. Tell me what you think.
Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously we can't just
turn
off the spigot on the system we have.
We're going to do that again because I think there might have been an audio issue. So we're going to share the screen, optimize the video, right? Cue the video up.
Why don't we blow the system?
And then I'll let you hear this. Because this is actually going to be related to what Bill Gates is talking about in relationship to this medical procedure while I look for the document. So it's about 1.5 minutes. All right, here we go. Screen 2. Let's begin.
Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet. But there must be some way that we grow vaccines mostly in eggs, the way we did in 1947.
In order to make the transition from getting out of the tried and true egg growing, which we know gives us results that can be, beneficial. I mean, we've done well with that, to something that has to be much better. You have to prove that this works, and then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
There might be a need or
We'll
even
replay
an
that.
urgent call.
That this particular clinical trials, then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
There might be a need or even an urgent call for an entity of excitement out there that's completely disruptive, that's not beholden to bureaucratic strings and processes.
So we really do have a problem of how the world perceives influenza, and it's going to be very difficult to change that unless you do it from within and say, I don't care what your perception is, we're going to address the problem in a disruptive way and in an iterative way, because you do need both.
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that.
Are y'all listening to this? Is this not, okay, you could say these are scientists, this is predictive programming or predictive planning, and it's not something that they plan to do, but they're planning it because it might happen. Man, just listen to the detail of their description about a medical procedure long before the pandemic or the situation has come about publicly. They're discussing their response to it, and they're also discussing how to develop a medical procedure for it. And if the public, or if the situation is not going to happen automatically, they're talking about making it happen. I mean, this is really, let me let you hear this guy again. One more time.
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that, beam it to a number of regional centers, if not local, if not even in your home at some point, and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
So that's something that they were discussing back then. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think you do either, if you've been following this. I was telling you about the video that I had downloaded, but let me pull it up. This is Mr. Bill Gates, as discussed. And so this is actually live on YouTube. Here we go. All right, let me share my screen, and then you can see it also. All right, here we
kick off actually and get a bit of a scene setter from Mr. Gates, because this is, I know, a topic that you've spoken on again. You were ahead of the curve prior to the beginning of this pandemic. Where would you assess where we are today in beating COVID-19?
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity, and it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines. If you do
Hope you caught that. I'll replay it. He said, sadly, the latest medical outbreak in this pandemic we're going through has actually done a better job than the medical procedure. I'll let you hear it from him again. But it's sad. How is that sad? Why is this sad?
Today in beating COVID-19?
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B cell and T cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines. If you do sero surveys in African countries, you get well over 80% of people have been exposed either to the vaccine or to various variants. And so, what that does is it means the chance of severe disease, which is mainly associated with being elderly and having obesity or diabetes, those risks are now dramatically reduced because of that infection exposure. And it's sad we didn't do a great job on therapeutics. Only here 2 years in do we have a good therapeutic. Vaccines, it took us 2 years to be in oversupply. Today, there are more vaccines than there is demand for vaccines. And that wasn't true. And next time we should try and make it, instead of 2 years, we should make it more like 6 months, which certainly, some of the standardized platform approaches, including mRNA, would allow us to do that. So, it took us a lot longer this time than it should have.
So how is that sad? Why would you be sad by such a thing? I mean, that's what he literally said. It's sad. I'm going to rewind the video so you can see it. But he also said, and this is the topic of tonight's discussion, that Africa apparently had 80% saturation, or 80% of its population basically show an immunity to this medical, an immunity to this disease, but they did not have a medical procedure. Instead, it looks like they contracted this disease, and as a result of the contraction of the disease, they develop a level of immunity. But like I showed you earlier, and I'll share it again, if you look at the maps, Africa did not go through high, they didn't have a whole lot of procedures that made them, they didn't get a lot of shots. I'll just say that. All right. I'm trying to skate around this as best I can, but it don't matter, because if they're going to censor the video, they're going to censor it anyway. So, it is what it is, right? As they always say. But let me show you this map. So this is the map. And it, the disease and those administered per 100 people. And this is as of February the 14th, 2022. So it's new. And you can see here all the doses, including boosters, are counted individually, as the same person may receive more than one dose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This is the official World Data report. Okay. This is from World Data. All right. You can Google this, .org. And you can see here the areas in dark green where there were more people who got the medical procedure. You can see the United States, where we are. That number is pretty high on the spectrum, right? Third bar, right? Canada, like the fourth bar. You've got some other countries here that are even darker green than we are. I guess that's Cuba right there. The point is, look at Africa. I mean, it stands out like a sore thumb in the middle of this map, and it's barely anybody here who received the procedure. I think the report said only 10% of the entire continent, not one country, The entire continent, only 10% of the continent got this medical procedure. Why is this important? Well, I'm going to show you why it's important. I'm going to show you why it's very, very valid. Where's the other map? Okay. I'll let you continue to look at that while I do this. Let me find the other map. This is so weird. You know, it's almost like, well, I'm not going to say that. But everything that I laid out and prepared for the show seems to have been moved around. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I am not a conspiracy theorist, right? But man, you talk about how things have just don't seem right. All right, here we go. Could be just late too. All right, here we go. This is the other map. This is of confirmed deaths per million. February 21st, yesterday, 2022. You notice something here? You see it? Look at Africa. So some could argue that there's maybe not causation. I think that's how it goes. Correlation, not causation. That there's something happening with this medical procedure. Some could argue that. I'm not arguing that. I'm pointing out that many have argued that. Because look at this map, which nobody is discussing. Why is this continent received only 10% of procedure that is supposed to stop you from getting this disease or dying from it, which is even worse, obviously, but they nearly have no deaths from this disease. I mean, look at that. Compared to the other countries that had the medical procedure. Now, again, let's look at that first map one more time. Here we go. Countries that were administered the medical procedure. Africa, nearly nothing, right? Down here in this 0 to 50 range for the most part. Light yellow, right? But then when you go to the map and you look at deaths associated with this disease and illness, look at that. Deaths per 1. Light yellow again. So the question should be on the mainstream media, what is Africa doing that is causing them to get through this and the rest of the world can't? To me, Stevie Wonder could see it, but that's me, you know. Everybody else seemed to, well, you know, everybody else may not have seen this information or this data, but that's why I'm showing it to you tonight, because it's not something that's well promoted and it's not something that's well planned. Now let's get back to our friend Bill Gates, because I would argue that he is the wrong person to be in charge of such a program. Well, why do you say that, Mike? Let me show you why I say that. Here's the video of Mr. Gates on CNBC.
$1 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
Over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
I think the numbers that you ran through were if you had put that money into an S&P 500 and reinvested the dividends, you'd come up with something like $17 billion, but you think it's $200 billion.
Here, yeah.
Women in cash. So this is the person that we want to trust, somebody who is not a doctor, somebody who is not a virologist, someone who is a businessman looking to make more money, plainly talking about the level of return on his investment for going into this business of creating solutions to this current disease. I think that's deplorable. I think it's horrible. I mean, you know what I think. But that's the reality of what happened, right? Let me show you another video here, just to give you an idea of, and this also ties into the very first video I showed from October 2019, when they were planning to execute or to have an event that would cause them to create a new medical procedure to help a potential problem, right? Listen to what Mr. Fauci's had to say about this.
The idea that we are now a few days away from a new administration, given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relative...
A surprise outbreak. He said this January 10th, 2017. To me, that's criminal, let alone obviously suspicious, but it's criminal considering what has happened since then. But, you know, he's gotten away with it. It's not something that is publicized. It's not something that's talked about. Is he just so smart that he can make a prediction like that? I don't think so. I don't think so. The reason I say that is because he's made some other predictions, and I'm going to point those out to you in the past, and they were not so good. Now, this particular video was made back in, I believe, 1984. I'm going to let you see it, because you could say, man, you know, he's just so smart. He just gets it right every time. I mean, come on. He's Dr. Fauci, right? You could say that. All right, well, this is Dr. Fauci about 40 years ago. Here we go.
Is going to have a major impact on our thinking about what the real conflict be reckoned with. So I think it is going to have a major impact on our thinking about what the real confines of the syndrome will be.
I mean, what are we talking about, other intimate contact?
Well, for example, there have been some cases of AIDS in women heterosexual partners of individuals who either had AIDS or at high risk of AIDS, like IV drug users and Haitians or what have you. Now, indeed, if one can have contact that is intimate, not necessarily sexual, then one's talking about the possibility of spreading out of groups that you would feel, if you stay away from sharing a needle with or having intimate sexual contact, that you're safe from the disease. This brings in the implications that there are other ways, just plain close contact. And given the...
So in 1984, the head of the NIH said that you could probably, possibly, maybe get AIDS from close contact. Does this sound like the alarmist that we've been dealing with today? I think it does. Well, he was wrong. He was dead wrong. And the whole country got alarmed by it, and people were losing their mind. Discrimination was rampant. People literally were doing all the stuff they're doing now, with the exception of wearing face diapers, back in the 80s when this happened. I'll let it continue.
The long incubation period of this disease, we may be starting to see, as we're seeing virtually as the months go by, other groups that can be involved, and seeing it in children is really quite disturbing.
When you say other close contact? Give me some examples.
Well, for example, if the close contact of a child is a household contact, perhaps there will be a certain number of cases of individual who are just living with and in close contact with someone with AIDS or at risk of AIDS who does not necessarily have to have intimate sexual contact or share a needle, but just the ordinary close contact that one sees in normal interpersonal relationships. Now, that may be far-fetched in the sense that
fear-mongering, but also lawyer talk. It may be far-fetched, it could happen, but at the same time, getting the point across, you should be scared.
That there have been no cases recognized as yet in which individuals have had merely casual contact, close albeit, with an individual with AIDS who, for example, have gotten AIDS. For example, there have been no cases yet reported of hospital personnel who have fairly close contact with patients with AIDS. There have been no case reports of them getting AIDS. But the jury is still out on that because the situation is constantly evolving and the incubation period is so long. As you know, it's a mean of about 14 months.
You see how that's doublespeak? He said all of that so that if it ever came out that he was wrong, he could point to this video and say, but I said there was no cases and blah, 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 blah. But the headline back in this video, this interview was taken on ABC News, was probably the NIH director says you could possibly catch AIDS from casual contact, not just with a needle or sexual intercourse.
Ranging from 6 to 18 months. So what medical researchers and public health service officials are concerned with is what we felt were the confines of transmissibility now going to be loosening up and broadening up so that something less than truly intimate contact can give transmission of this disease.
All right, so that was him back in the 80s. I thought it was very interesting when I pulled up this this video because I hadn't seen that before. The guy looks like he doesn't even age, which is kind of weird, but yeah, anyway. So that was him back then. I think you've seen the video here, but if you haven't, I want to show it to you. This is the
People should not be walking around.
the flip-flop, which has been so crazy. And then I'm gonna let you see this, but I want to get back to the original topic at hand once you see this. But this is what we're dealing with, right? Clearly. Here we go.
With masks. Let me just state for the record that masks are not theater. Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and masks are protective. But it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
There has not been any indication that putting a mask on and wearing a mask for a considerable period of time has any deleterious effects.
There are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course.
You do not need to wear a mask indoors if, in fact, you've been vaccinated. Good that you're vaccinated, but in a situation where you have people indoors, particularly crowded, you should wear a mask.
So even if you are vaccinated, you should wear a mask. If, in fact, you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, you are protected, and you do not need to wear a mask outdoors or indoors. When the children go out into the community, you want them to continue to wear masks.
If you look at children outside, particularly when they're with the family, walking down the street, playing a game or what have you, don't have to wear a mask.
The Academy of Pediatric actually makes that recommendation that children should be wearing masks from 2 years old onward.
And you're asking now, if your child is a member of your household, can you walk outdoors with your child without a mask? According to that chart, the answer is yes.
But the child can't, not to beat it to death.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Because now the CDC says, I think I've got this right. 1 mask is better than 0 masks. 2 masks is better than 1 mask. But you don't have to have double masks. Is that right?
It became clear that cloth coverings that you didn't have to buy in a store, that you could make yourself, were adequate. And then you want it to fit better. So one of the ways you could do it, if you would like to, is put a cloth mask over, which actually here and here and here, where you could get leakage in, is much better contained.
And are you a double masker, Dr. Fauci? Look like you are.
It originated in China.
We only have a little time left. I want to ask you, sources are telling CNN the top health officials are weighing whether to
You know what? I'm actually tired of looking at that. You probably are too if you've seen it before. It is a classic example of just constant flip-flopping and flip-flopping and flip-flopping. And that's why we're in this situation. But here's another document I want you to look at. Now, this is from the CDC. Everybody has been losing their mind for the last couple of years about this issue. Look at the stats. Just look at them. Children virtually have no issues with this. They're basically immune. Now, are there children out there that may have an issue? You know, if they have a pre-existing condition, cancer, diabetes, some other illness, of course. There's always outliers. There's always people who are ill, and one small thing can just tip them and take them over the edge. I'm not questioning that. In fact, there is a CDC report that said that comorbidities is the biggest reason why so many people have died. People with up to 4 comorbidities have the highest death rate with this particular illness. But all right, so look at the range, 0 to 19. This is your survival rate for each group by age. 0 to 19, 99.997% survival rate. 20 to 49, 99.98% survival rate. Now, this is my age group. That means that I had, let me make sense of this. Because if you 0.002% chance of dying. Of dying, because my survival rate is 99.98%. And why did we go crazy and set the world on fire? All right. Ages 50 to 69. You have a 99.5% survival rate. That means 0.5% of these people who are close to retirement age or in retirement, you only have a 0.5% chance of succumbing to this through death. And then 70 plus, 94.6%. When you think about these numbers, there are higher statistics for car accidents, definitely for heart attacks, definitely for cancer and other ailments in this country. Hell, cigarette smoking kills more people than this, but this is what we've been dealing with. And I think this next video, this is Obama's former chief of staff, former mayor of Chicago. Listen to what he says about crisis.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before. I think America as a whole in 1973 and 1974, not just my view, but obviously the administration, missed the opportunity to deal with the energy crisis that was before us for a long time.
The main point, now he's talking about, you know, the energy crisis and other situations that the Obama administration dealt with. But listen to what he said about crisis and opportunity one more time, because that's what we're dealing with.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before. I think America as a whole in 1973 and 1974, not just my view, but obviously the administration, missed the opportunity to deal with the energy crisis that was before us.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste, because you can do things like rules, mandates, laws. You can basically destroy businesses. 60% of Black businesses in this country were destroyed after this medical pandemic. Numerous other entities were decimated. Main Street destroyed. But Wall Street and big corporations, well, they took advantage of this opportunity, didn't they? Because if the mom and pop store has to be closed because somehow the disease is prevalent when, there's only 10,000 square feet, or hell, when there's only 2,000 square feet of space, right, in a corner store. Oh, it'll get you, but it won't get you if you're in a superstore, right? A super Walmart, a super Target. It won't get you. Nope. You have to be in a small business, then it'll get you. All right, here's another video that deals exactly with what Wall Street and how Wall Street benefited from this.
After another week full of exciting vaccine news, positive data from Moderna, which sent them to the moon, an accelerated clinical trial timeline from Johnson & Johnson, which did nothing for the stock. You know what I want to do? I'm going to come up with a better way to invest in this thing. I mean, it's just gotten to be too much of a dice roll. I'm not comfortable with it. This vaccine gold rush is starting to bother me. Gold rush.
Vaccine gold rush. God, listen to this. We saw the video earlier with Bill Gates about making a 20-fold return.
Let's keep that in mind. You got my blessing to buy the big pharma and biotech companies that are working overtime to beat the virus. Here I'm thinking about J&J, Pfizer, especially Regeneron, and perhaps AstraZeneca, depending upon the information we learned from Lancet Monday that I talked about at the top of the show. These are all diversified companies, though, and they are not pure plays in the pandemic. All right, how about these smaller vaccine developers that you see at the bottom of what we call the crawl, where they're always going up, making crazy moves? Well, most of them are too risky for me, especially after they've had such enormous runs. Of course, I said the same thing about Novavax a few weeks ago. And then a few days later, they won a massive $1.6 billion commitment from the federal government to help manufacture their still unproven vaccine, and that turned the stock into a rocket ship. It was up again today. I was too cautious in Novavax. You got to own that.
Look, I just want to point out the fact that a lot of people made a lot of money off the suffering of other people. And I think that's despicable. And I think it speaks of a crime. I think behind every fortune, there's a crime. Hell, that's America, right? And I don't think this situation is no different. And we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be aware of that. But it's sad that you can't even have this conversation without people looking at you like you said something wrong. When the people responsible, the companies responsible for developing these medical procedures have made tons of money, billions of dollars. They've seen their stocks skyrocket. Let me see if I can find this article for you, because I don't want you to take my word for it. You should, because I haven't been wrong in showing you this information, but I am going to show you something here regarding this whole money-making scheme. Because as we talked about earlier, let's look at the map. Let's look at the map. Some places, you know what? Some places didn't go through this process. Look at that. Did any doses? Did not get any vaccines. Look at that. 0. Well, what happened? People should be dropping dead, right? They should be falling down everywhere. This is what happened. Look at the deaths. See that? Next to 0. I'm telling you, it's very, very suspicious. Very, very, very suspicious. I would be very, very concerned. Yeah, I would be very, very concerned if I was someone who participated and got a procedure done. I would be very concerned. I really would. Let me see if I can find how much money these companies made so that you can see exactly what profiteers do in crisis, like Rahm Emanuel said. Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't think this is coincidence. This is forecasting. Now, I know they made more than this. I just got to find the article. $26 billion in the vaccine revenue. And after the first quarter, that's right. There's a lot of money to be made off other people suffering. Now you would argue, well, you know, they did a good thing. They came through for people and blah, blah, blah. And you know what, we needed to do that. And you know what, it was good. This is a good company. Mike, why are you talking about them like that? Why are you, why are you beating them up for what they did? You know, they did a good thing. These companies are in business to make money. It's the bottom line. And if they can take advantage of a crisis like this to get their stock up, to get their profits up, regardless of the treatment is successful or not, they're going to do it. The issue that I'm concerned with is that it's never brought out. This information is typically suppressed. You only hear the good side of the circumstance in the situation. Let me end the video by saying this, okay? We have an opportunity right now, a good opportunity. And I said this in yesterday's video, to really get past this, because I think that people are seeing through the BS. That's why there's a run up for a war potentially with Russia, because they really need to get people back distracted again. Because people are starting to figure this out. And a lot of people who have taken this medical procedure, quietly in some circles, they're saying, you know what, I'm kind of pissed because I feel like I was lied to. That's what they're saying. Now, the mainstream media won't talk about that, but there is a lot of backlash, particularly in Canada. We're talking about an American bordered country, a country that borders America on the north, right there, smack dab in the middle. And for 2 weeks, the corporate media didn't do any coverage on the trucker strike. The truckers in Canada who bring in goods and services from Canada to the United States continually, they should be applauded. These truckers protested, and there was no coverage in the media until the last week or so. But for the last month, we've been covering the border crisis in Ukraine. Don't you see the significance of that? Don't you see the distraction? Europe, Ukraine, Eastern Europe is halfway around the world. But the border country to our north had their entire economy just about shut down in terms of supplies and demand. So much so that the Prime Minister, Trudeau, who in my opinion is a dictator and a tool of the global elite, he came in, jackboots, police officers, beating people up, and basically destroyed this movement of truckers. They had like $9 million taken from them through their Patreon or some type of third-party account where they were raising money. The government literally took their money from their account, confiscated it. These were donations given to them by people who supported their movement. And what was the movement for? They were against the vaccine mandates in Canada. They were against somebody forcing them to take a medical procedure, and they were shut down. No coverage in the corporate media, none whatsoever. And as for the Prime Minister, Trudeau, let me show you what I think about Trudeau. If any of you have been paying attention, you are probably familiar with the term called the Great Reset. You probably heard it in passing. Well, the leader of this Great Reset movement is a guy by the name of Charles Schwab. He runs the World Economic Forum. He's a real evil villain looking guy. I'm gonna let you see a video with Charles Schwab talking about Mr. Trudeau and other politicians. who you think might be independent? Here we go.
And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global.
Merkel of Germany, Putin, Russia. Keep watching.
Leaders of the World Economic Forum. But in young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for...
They penetrate cabinets? Did you hear that? So our elections don't mean anything? If the World Economic Forum can have young tutelings, young people that they groom to rule the world, and these people that they groom actually are successful in doing that, and they go back and run countries and penetrate cabinets, do we really have free and fair elections? That's the question. Let them continue.
Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Wait a minute, did you hear that? I'm going to replay it. Prime Minister Trudeau is what he said. He knows that most or half of his cabinet are from the World Economic Forum. Here it is again.
That we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader, but what is...
So this term, young global leaders. So Charles Schwab wrote this book here. I'll show you. You know, I love books. I like the feel of a hard book. Some people, you know, some people like getting books online. Some people are like me, and they still like to feel a book in its form. So this is his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. It's so weird that a person would write a book related to a pandemic, an illness affecting the entire globe, and promote it as a reset. Now, he wrote this book, and as the leader of the World Economic Forum, he's not shy about talking about how this particular disease is going to reset everything from the global economy, technology, environment, health, industrial, everything. And he's proud of it. And he's looking forward to it. Everything. The way we deal with money, the way we deal with each other. What did Rahm Emanuel say in the video I showed you? Never let a good crisis go to waste. They're going to use this crisis to reset the planet if we don't stop them, if we allow it to happen. Listen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. It's been over an hour. I think that I have an educated audience. I think that, you know, if you tune into this show, you already are probably a seeker, or you know that something is wrong. And I want to give you the breakdown and give you information that you're not going to get from the corporate media. So with that said, in order for this channel to stick around, in order for me to continue to do this work, I want to ask you to support the channel. Am I asking you to send me some money? No, I don't want your money. But what I do sincerely hope you do is like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then share the video and ask someone else to subscribe. If you do that for me, we can get this message out and more people will hear it from a perspective that they normally wouldn't get it from. Listen, I appreciate you watching tonight. Thank you again. And signing off, Free Thought Channel. Wow, Free Thought. See, for those who know, this channel used to be called the Free Thought Channel. And occasionally I make that mistake, but it's the Scott Report. So I want to thank you for watching another episode of the Scott Report. And I appreciate your support.